We're going to do a session on op risk, enterprise risk, and what's going on in terms of updates, features, functionality that's coming in, and so on. So, over to you.
All right. Hello, everyone. Sorry again, you have to listen to me for next couple of minutes, but I'll try to give more content for Ritesh to cover. All right. So we'll start with there. Just to quickly showcase what we have as part of the agenda. So we're going to start with the ERM, ORM, or the risk trends that we are observing in the market and what are the challenges that are associated with that. We'll give you a quick overview of how the MetricStream risk product and the capabilities look like. Most of you must be already using it, or you must have seen a glance of it. And then we're going to also talk about what's coming next, right? And today you must have attended a couple of keynotes where we talked about Aspire. We wanted to highlight that how Aspire can be used to add value using the cognitive capability to your risk management solution. So with that, let us directly get into the market trends and challenges, right? So all of us have just come out of pandemic, right? Sometimes I wonder, have we really come out of it, or it's just a dream, right? Along with that, we also have the banking crisis. We know there are wars that are happening. There are digitalization activity that have happened, the adoption of crypto in the market, then metaverse, people are talking about it. So there are a lot of emerging risks that are out there, right? And as a risk manager, we have to control these risks, not at just the global level, multi-dimensional level, but also at the international level. And that's where for a chief risk officer, from a couple of years, what has come is gradually they had to keep on adding more bandwidth to their team to start managing, handling these unknown areas, the emerging risk as well. But now this is the year of efficiency, and what we have been hearing from the market, from our customer, that the chief risk officer have now been given the responsibility to optimize and make the risk function much more effective. But at the same time, from the subordinates or supervisors, there has been a pressure that no, the risks are still evolving. Every day we get to know about a new situation, new risk event, new compliance, new regulatory guidelines. We cannot cut down on the resourcing that we have. So that is where it is very important for a risk function to make a balance and still bring out efficiency within the team. Along with that, I think all of you must be using ChatGPT. I mean, now cognitive intelligence, prompt intelligence, ChatGPT, Bard, these are all buzzwords and everyone is using it. But still, it is very important to understand two factors. First one is how to leverage AI in GRC and how to do GRC of AI, right? Because it is very essential to use AI in a very controlled manner, because there are a lot of risks that are also getting evolved because of the adoption of this technology. The third, and again a very important thing and something we have been seeing across, is ESGRC. Now, ESGRC is now not just the important aspect for the enterprise or the government or the regulatory bodies. It is also something that your customers, right? It is also something that your investors are closely tracking. They want to understand that how you managing the climate change risk. How are you ensuring that there is a social unrest? How are you managing that risk? They are also very interested to understand that if there's a governance failure, how are you going to manage that risk, right? So that way, ESGRC is coming out to be a very important aspect, and the risk function have to play a very important role in managing it. Now, these are the trends, and I hope all of you also align to it. If there's something else, some other trend, do highlight it. We will be more than happy to talk more on that. But with these trends, we are seeing a lot of challenges as well. Now, with the evolving risk, there are different functions within your organization, different business units managing the same type of risk in a different way. And this is where we are seeing multiple risk taxonomies evolving, right? It is becoming very difficult to ensure that you have a very streamline of managing these evolving risks, right? And then the byproduct of having multiple risk taxonomy is the unstructured risk data, right? Because each risk have its own language, its own title, own description, own way of managing it, own way of testing it. That's where the whole data structure around risk is becoming very, very unstructured. And again, increasing volume and the velocity of the risk that you're facing, each and every risk you face on day-to-day basis is becoming much more complex, and it has been the way you have never seen before, right? It has transformed it in such a drastic way. The other important aspect is on the real-time visibility of risk, because now the risk is managed across multiple functions. You may not get a very holistic way in sense of how different teams are managing it, or how different teams are perceiving a different risk or a same risk in a different way. And the last one, you must already be getting a lot of requirements from the board of directors to talk about, what are the new emerging risks, what are the impact that the organization have, and what is the advantage that the organization could take from those risks to maybe come out with a new business service, maybe come up with a new revenue stream out there. So that's where the last thing that we are seeing a lot is in terms of the demand from the board of directors. All right, so after looking at the emerging risk landscape from MetricStream, we have these 4 important terminologies that start with C, right? The first one is connected. Now today, Prasad talked about that MetricStream not just offer a single product risk, it offers multiple products that manages the complete GRC portfolio. Now these products, if you're going to have multiple products, these products can talk to each other, and that's where you can have a connected GRC landscape or connected GRC overview that can be presented to your team. You can see how different modules, different data sets can talk to each other, and much more insight can be generated rather than looking at a particular function from GRC in a siloed way. Another thing is cognitive. We strongly believe in the capabilities of AI/ML, both in terms of how it can give advantage to the GRC function, and also in terms of how you can run your GRC function around AI, right? And that's where we have been investing heavily in AI and cognitive intelligence. And you must have heard of Aspire. Aspire is our latest cognitive AI/ML based offering that we have out there. And today we're going to talk about how Aspire can play a very important role in the risk function. Continuous, we believe that things have to be continuous. You should have continuous control monitoring, continuous auditing, and you should have easier way of connecting to your different content integration services. In my previous session, I talked about with no code, low code, how you can achieve it. Then we have cloud. Now cloud is not about just getting on, say, Azure cloud, AWS cloud. It is much more than that. It is about how you can have elasticity around cloud, how it is scalable, how you can use low code, no code, how it can have simplified user experience. And that is where we are investing a lot in building the cloud strategy. Just to quickly talk about some of the key capabilities that we offer as part of our ORM, ERM module, operational and enterprise risk module. So we have the risk universe, which is nothing but the GRC libraries. That's what we also call it as, where you define risk controls, couple of other relations in terms of processes, standards. Then you have the risk and control self-assessment process, followed by control testing capability. Then you have the risk event and loss event. So this comes as part of our operational risk management module. Then we have the frontline observation, where your frontline, first line team can log their observations. Then we have the risk quantification module. We also provide you with key risk and control indicators, the KPIs, and then you have the key reports and dashboards, with which we also provide with our latest Euphrates 1 version self-service capability of reporting as well. And now the centerpiece that you see is Aspire. Now these are all the existing capabilities. Going more deep into this particular presentation, we're going to talk about how Aspire as an cognitive capability is going to add value to all the modules that you see over here, right? Ritesh, do you want to?
Yeah. Right, so I'll take a few minutes. So this slide is about what we typically have heard from different customer experiences. I think the word I heard one customer say was, what's the MetricStream memory of what your experiences across customers have been? What are the areas that we typically see as part of a journey? And I think there were a couple of questions in the previous session during the Medial Anand case study. We'll talk about that as well. So The bulbs there, the idea elements there are actually talking about where we see use cases which can make a difference, a significant difference. So I'll take it in sequence. So what we have on the left, starting from the left, is the libraries, the risk hierarchy, the organization hierarchy, moving on to the register, metrics, and then the what I think of it as transactional elements, the RCSA control test areas. Now, the first bulb there on the left, the risk hierarchy, again, from different implementations. I was part of the services team for a while. I've seen different implementations, big fours coming in, trying to do a structuring of the data, defining the levels, defining the taxonomy, handing it over to the core team, the central governance and risk and compliance team. Then the governance, risk and compliance team owning it for a while, maybe a couple of years, and then transitioning to the business. There was a question in one of the earlier sessions, at what point do you make that transition? Is that a good idea? And so on. One realization that we have had over a period of years is it works based on what the culture within the enterprise is. You could choose to make the business own their risks, in the sense they log their risks as a part of an assessment, then put it into the library, take it through a governance exercise and so on, and then it becomes a part of the library and structure. However, what we have also noticed is the same risk gets defined in different ways, almost as duplicates. Semantically, they are similar, but they are logged as different elements within the libraries. Now, what we see as the first key use case within some of our, for example, the Aspire offering, is to be able to give you that insight of where you see a semantic similarity across risk. We'll go into a little more detail in one of the slides coming up. The next one, the idea bullet there in the RCSAs, I think we had one closed door meeting yesterday. We have a closed door meeting happening today. This was another use case that came up. How does a set of issues, how does a set of control failures almost trigger a risk assessment? How can it not be quarterly and following a frequency element or a scheduling element, but be more, in Sunay's words, cognitive, understanding of what has happened in the field and therefore trigger an assessment? Similarly with control tests, how has second line, the compliance team, done a control test? What has failed there, or areas of failure which can then lead to action in the RCSA? Risk treatments. This is another customer. Kumar and I worked together. They launched a controlled self-assessment across the globe at the same time for a particular area. Now, what used to happen is the same issue got logged in different parts of the globe. The different geographies were different markets. So each of them logged, because let's say it was Group Digital who needed to define a treatment plan, a risk mitigation strategy. Now, how does it not get duplicated without it, or almost getting or piggybacking on something that's already been logged? How do you avoid that duplication? Now, so defining, or what we call issue recommendations and also action recommendations, that's the part which we see on the right. So 4 different use cases, 4 or 5 different use cases that we talk about here. What we'll do is we'll go into a little more detail on each slide, and then we'll talk about how Aspire can make a significant impact. Yeah.
All right. So here what you see is called as a knowledge graph. This is GRC ontology-based knowledge graph. Now, what it does is it identifies or studies your network of, GRC libraries. It builds the relationship and also help you understand if you have duplicate data, for example, duplicate risk, duplicate controls that are configured. That is the first part. The second part is it also tells you that if you have, say, a risk have a control, and that control is mapped to a couple of other key elements, maybe a process, maybe a standard, then why don't you go ahead and map it to the risk that you're analyzing? It also helps you understand in case if you have missing GRC relations. Assume there's a risk that do not have a GRC relationship, then it's going to recommend that what are the different GRC relationships you can create with that risk and ensure that you have a wider coverage rather than looking at it in the silo. It will also do a comparison with duplicate or similar risk out there, and will also project what are the different type of relationships that duplicate and similar risk are having. So it will start recommending that, hey, these two risks are quite duplicate in nature, quite similar in nature contextually. Why don't you also include these other relationship to have a holistic coverage? So that's where knowledge graphs, because it is very visual in nature, it showcases a very powerful story to ensure that you have a holistic coverage across your GRC library objects, especially around risk. Anything, Ritesh, that you would like to add?
Good.
All right, so the next capability as part of Aspire that we have is called as the Scope Advisor. Now, what Scope Advisor does is, it builds a comparative, comparative outcome by studying the similar risk posture across multiple organizations. So it looks at historical information of risk assessment. It looks at the historical information of a control assessment, then tries to compare and identify if there are, different organizations that have the same risk posture. And if that is what the model is able to identify, then it'll start to suggest that, hey, these two organizations are very similar to each other when it comes to risk. Why don't you have the other set of control that organization B is having? Why it is not configured in organization A? So that way it creates a cluster of similarity and start recommending good connections that can be added based on two organizations that share the similar risk posture. So that's what you have as part of the Scope Advisor. The third one that we have is around, so there are two things that we're going to cover and to focus on what Ritesh was also talking about. The first part is around the issue management. So the system goes ahead and start identifying similar issues, right? Now, why it is identifying similar issues? Because system want to showcase that there are recurring pattern of issues that are happening again and again. So why are you solving the issues in silo? But rather than look at the holistic picture, why the issues are happening multiple times, and answer or address the root cause rather than looking at one issue at a time. And that's where the issue, the AI capability as part of issue recommendation can play a very big role. It is also going to create a thematic grouping of issues so that you can understand that what are the key themes or the top themes where most number of issues are occurring. Now, the second aspect to it is the next best action recommendation. Now, this is about the treatment part, right? So system will also understand the issues and what are the actions that should be recommended for these issues, so that your team don't have to get into historical information that how a particular issue was handled, what were the set of actions that were performed on it, rather than the AI model is going to do that heavy lifting for you. And then it's going to give you a choice that select the right set of action that you want to apply on this particular risk. It is also going to identify what type should be associated to a particular issue. So a lot of different people, maybe they are experienced, maybe they are very new in your team. They may identify a particular risk or classify a particular issue in a different category. So that's where, based on historical information, the AI model will come up with the right set of, the classification that you have for your issues, and it's going to recommend the classification that you should be associating. Ritesh, you want to talk about the?
Yeah. So yeah, this is on the new assessment experience now. Some of you might have seen in the last a few sessions during the last 2 days, yesterday and today, how the UX, the user experience has changed. This was something that we got as regular feedback from many of our customers. How do I know where is a risk assessment in a particular part of the workflow? How do I get to a particular risk assessment without having to navigate to it? How can it be more intuitive? How can I see all the information in one screen, less white space? So this is a result of all of that feedback. What you can see is a typical risk assessment view. What you're able to see is from an almost a linear layout, you're moving into a more tabular layout. You're able to see all your pending assessments as a task list. Very intuitive, pretty. I would think, like most other tools in the industry, you will see that kind of an experience, because the user experience experts who worked on such tools also worked on this one. So yeah.
Sure. So a couple of other things that I would like to add. The first one is now the risk assessment, because the risk assessment is going to have multiple risks. Earlier, you could have worked on one risk at a time, but now we have broken it down into more flexible or granular capability. So that's where you can have one risk picked by one assessor, second risk picked by second assessor, and that's where multiple people can collaborate at the same time. So this is one of the key advantages you're going to have with the new user interface design for the risk assessment piece. And also when you go through a particular form, and Ritesh highlighted that it's more of a tab-based approach, but what if you're in a particular tab and you lose the context of the risk or maybe a control form that you were looking at. So on the left-hand side, you have something called as info pane. Now info pane is going to have all the key elements to ensure that you always have the context available to you, irrespective of which tab you're currently in, right? So that is another thing that we've added as part of the new user experience. All right, so talking about the enhanced insights and reports, and this is something that Joy also presented today. Now we have used a very different design language over here, right? So on top, what you see are called as scorecards. Now scorecards are not just going to have the metric-based value or value-based information, but it is also going to have charts embedded within it, so that you have a visual representation of the data that you want to see and which is important for you. Now, what you can also do is these charts are interactive. You can drill down, you can get into reports, and it also gives you a level of personalization where you can define how you want to see your own charts. Maybe you don't want to see a particular color, right? You can go ahead and personalize that for yourself, and you can change the colors. You can also go ahead and define the levels at which the metric color can start changing automatically. For example, if I have more than 100 risk, I want to see it in red, but if it is less than 100 risk, I want to see it in amber, right? So that type of personalization will be allowed going forward as part of the new user experience. And that's why it is going to bring in a lot of personalization as well as interactive capabilities. All right, so next thing that we have is risk assessment for non-BFSI customers. So generally, the BFSI customers, and many of you will agree to it, have a more elaborative assessment flows, right? It goes through multiple cycles. There are multiple well-defined processes that you follow. But we also have a lot of non-BFSI customers, and we always get this requirement that why for us the flow is so complex, right? Our risk assessment flow is sort of straightforward. We do it from one place. We want to create risk, manage risk, maybe treat risk, and then monitor risk from one place. Why do you want us to go through multiple flows, multiple forms, multiple reports? So what we have done is, and what you're seeing over here is again the new user experience that we're going to introduce, and it is part of our roadmap. So this is where from a single form, right? So you have a risk register form. From there, you can manage, monitor, treat risk, all of it from one single place, right? But the advantage is still going to allow you to use the risk capabilities of the algorithms and KPIs and all those things, so that you can use the key capabilities of the risk module that is already existing, but still you can do all of that from one place in a much more simplified way. All right, so now talking about what we have as part of our one-year roadmap. The first item, and a lot of you have requested it, so we currently don't have a data upload capability for the risk assessment, right? So we can't bulk upload your risk assessment data. And this is where we are getting this capability, where using a simplified data upload, you will be able to upload all your risk assessments in one go, right? So that is something that we have planned, and it will be available as part of Euphrates 2. Now, the second thing that we have is on the integrated risk management processes. The first capability that we are going to have will be around the appetite, risk appetite. So we are going to introduce the risk appetite statement. So you can define what is your risk appetite, and then you can associate it to your KPIs and KRIs, right? So a lot of you have asked for having a well-defined the appetite statement, and we're going to get it for you. The next capability that we have, and again, a lot of people in ORM, ERM use it to a good extent, is review and challenge, right? So your first line is doing the assessments, but the second line would want to go ahead and do the review of the assessments and maybe want to challenge it. And this is where you're going to get this capability which is going to allow you to do that. It is going to support both the capabilities. You can do review and challenge of selected fields or maybe all the fields of the assessment. And the third point that we have is around the cause and consequence. Now, this is the introduction of bow tie diagram or bow tie analysis. Now, before going to the assessment, we want our users to do the bow tie analysis, identify what are the causes, what are the consequences of that particular risk, and then go ahead with the assessment. So this is what you're going to have as the third part of the integrated risk management roadmap. Now, talking about the last capability, which is the cognitive automation. So this is what we talked about in the previous slide. This is the scope advisor. So we have already created the algorithm. If any one of you want to see a demo, we can also plan a demo for you, how it is going to work. But that is something that we are going to bring as part of the one-year roadmap, and it will be integrated as part of the risk offering. So this is what we have as part of the roadmap. Now, that's all we have as part of this session. In case if you have any questions, queries, suggestions, please feel to say. Sure, please go.
One last point about
We have 5 people.
suggesting risk based on is that dependent on the language you use?
Yes, so we have our own proprietary models, and we have written our own machine language, created our own machine language models to bring that insights.
I was the language which is inserted by
Okay, so
who using it. Is that inserted in Dutch or in English or in German?
yeah, so currently we have done it for English, but we do plan to bring in internationalization in future. But we'll be more than happy to connect with you to understand. First we want to showcase what the capability does, and then we can certainly talk about, how we can manage or maybe plan our roadmap for other languages as well. All right, thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks.